guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop. Today is March 1st, 2024, and today's video is pre-recorded because I'm currently in Nashville at the Needlework Market Show. I wanted to let you know our video today is going to be super awesome. It is going to be broken up into two segments. The first segment is going to be a Stronger Together guest, and the second segment is going to be our Moonbeams Charity Block 1. So let's jump right in to our guest. Our guest is Vickeidy Plybon. Welcome to Fat Quarter Shop.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Vickeidy is a high school teacher turned quilter. She comes from a multi-generational family of sewists and makers and has been quilting since 2018. She's a designer of this block right here, which is the upward block. And if you're looking for her online, you can find her under the company name Sewspicious, Sewspicious, and I have all of her PDFs on our site at Fat Quarter Shop. So Vickeidy, let's talk about your quilting journey and like how you started quilting in 2018 and kind of where you started.
Yeah, so my story is a little bit all over the place. So as you mentioned, my mom is a sewist. She studied fashion design in the Dominican Republic, and growing up in the Dominican Republic, maybe like 8 out of the 24 hours of the day, we didn't have any electricity. It's a common thing. Yeah, so she had a treadle so she can keep her business going while there wasn't any electricity. And then fast forward, we moved to the United States in 2003 to New York City, and she left that behind. She wasn't sewing anymore. She wasn't doing any fashion designing here. She was doing something else. And then fast forward more, in 2017, I found a sewing machine on Facebook Marketplace that reminded me a lot of that treadle that my mother used to have. So I bought it. I did not know what to do with it. So I went on to YouTube University and I learned how to fix it, oil it, clean it, and I got it nice and running. One of my uncles actually helped me rewire the motor to make sure that it was just the cable was a little frayed and not working right. And so I presented it to her as a gift, and she gave it back to me just like, thank you, but no thank you. And so then that just sparked the curiosity in me, and I started collecting vintage sewing machines until I came across the Featherweight 221, the little tiny one. And so I was Googling about this machine, and I learned that it is the perfect machine for quilters. I did not know what a quilter was, so I Googled it. And I've been quilting ever since.
Awesome. So did you take a class at a local store or did you just learn by looking at YouTube videos?
I learned on YouTube and Googling. In New York City, there aren't really any sewing shops or quilting shops, I want to say. There was one and recently closed, and one just recently opened.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I wasn't really into the stores itself. I was just going online, buying things online, and fixing them up on my own.
And what kind of fabric are you drawn to? Are you drawn to like certain colors or a certain manufacturer of fabrics?
I love I love really solid fabric. I like the really bright, saturated colors. They're vivid. Those are the ones I gravitate towards the most. And I am currently an ambassador for Art Gallery Fabrics. And so they're my favorite fabric line at the moment, or manufacturer.
Awesome. And then what size quilts are you normally piecing?
On Well, I don't have the featherweight anymore. Now I have a bigger machine. So I can do anything from a baby to a queen size on my machine at home. Yeah.
And do
I
you do
don't
the long arm quilting
discriminate.
or do you send that out?
I don't do my own long arm quilting.
Okay.
I send it out to my friend Orlando from Quiltisaurus. He's also local in the Bronx, and we just have that friendship, partnership. He does all my quilts.
Okay, awesome. And then do you have any quilts you want to show us today?
I'm already in North Carolina for QuiltCon.
Oh,
And
that's right. Okay, so what are you most excited about for QuiltCon? I totally forgot about that.
I am excited to see all the hall with the show itself. I want to see all the quilts and see everybody's work, their creativity, see what's out there right now. Unfortunately, I didn't get Jared into the show, but I want to see what they're looking for so that maybe next year I can have a quilt in the show.
Are you taking any of the classes?
I am not. No, I was not able to sign in. It is such a cutthroat
Yes.
thing. You have to be on it right away.
Yeah,
And
very
I missed
limited.
it. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I was not able to get any classes, but I'll be there all weekend. Just I'll be at 2 booths, and I'll just be hanging out the rest of the weekend.
So do you what day you're going to go to the whole thing, like all the days?
Yes, all the days.
Awesome. Okay, so when they open that show, don't they already have all the quilt winners announced, right? Right at the beginning, or do they announce that later?
I think they have the winners announced except for the People's Choice, and
Okay.
that one is done at the end.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um so I would love to know on your quilt blog if you could talk about the inspiration for your quilt blog for our Stronger Together quilt and how you designed it. Like, what are your thoughts and feelings behind the blog?
Yes, so my quilt is inspired on building a strong base to build up and lift each other up. And that's why you can see like the blocks just lifting on each other, and that's the inspiration behind my block. As a teacher, I feel like it's our responsibility to help the community, help my students to come up and do better, and help them help others do better, like teach them how to lead.
Mhm.
And so that's the inspiration for my block.
And just so everyone can see, like, this is a half square triangle, all of these. And then
Hmm.
this is like a half of an hourglass on the other side of a half square triangle all the way up. So it's
Yes,
definitely
so
doable. It looks harder
quarter
than it
square
is.
triangles.
Yeah. I mean, it looks
Hmm.
harder. I mean, I guess you could piece it with a square and a square, but and then a rectangle. So I mean, you could do different things, but I like the way we put it together. So tell me
Yes, I
about
did
your
too. It's super easy.
yeah, tell me about your teaching and what you teach, the ages you teach.
Yes, so I teach a mostly immigrant community in Washington Heights in New York City. It's a community where I see myself reflected. I moved here when I was 15 years old. I didn't speak any English. And so I went to high school. I was ready to do my senior year of high school.
Oh my
But
goodness.
because I was so young and because I didn't speak the language, I had to repeat my junior year. And so I work with a very similar population of students. I teach them Spanish, but it runs as a English language arts class. So it's giving them something that they already know, something that they're able to succeed and feel proud of themselves, and that so that they can move on and learn English and succeed in their other classes as well.
And how did you design your first quilt and publish your first quilt pattern? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So Mary Davis, she was a prior guest,
Mm-hmm.
found me online, and I was talking to her about wanting to design because there were not many designers of color when I started quilting, and I wanted to make a quilt by someone who looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
So her and I were having a conversation, and she's the one that gave me the push. She told me, you can do this. You're great at your work. She pushed me to do Pattern Writing Academy by Alderwood Studio. I applied and received a scholarship for that, and that was in 2022. And yeah, thanks to Mary Davis, I am the designer that I am today.
And you have about 8 patterns, right? I hope I have that number right.
Yes, there are 8 published right now, released right now, and I'm working on 4 more for this year.
And are you hoping to move into fabric design or just stay with patterns?
I would like to move into fabric design in the future. It's an opportunity that I would love to try out. I don't want to just stay as a pattern designer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to expand in the industry a little more, but it's not a goal for this year because I am expecting. So I just feel like I won't have the time.
You won't have the time. Do
No,
you know if you're having a girl or a boy?
no, we're gonna be
You're going to be
surprised. We're
surprised.
waiting for the
Okay.
day.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
When are you due?
May 11th.
Oh, yeah, quick. That's coming
Yeah,
right up.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I have a 3-year-old, we also did not find out with her. We waited to be surprised. And so it's been really fun watching her and like having her figure out what she wants as a sibling, a boy or girl.
I wonder
So it's been great.
what she's gonna say that day. Like if she'll be surprised or she'll probably be happy either way.
Yeah, she's convinced it's a girl.
Oh, she is.
So
Okay.
yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So I've seen
Yeah.
those like videos where like parents keep it like a secret and then they tell the sibling and then they cry, no, I wanted a boy, or oh, I wanted a girl. And they're so funny.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Um, so we did get some questions ahead of time that were specifically for
Mhm.
you. So I was going to go ahead and go to those. In a world that requires more and more content and ideas all the time, how do you stay inspired to keep going and not get like stuck?
I think doing something creative every day is what helps me move forward and not get stuck. I think putting my creativity, putting some work out, and doing something every day helps me find inspiration and keep going in what I'm doing.
And do you think you'll ever start teaching kids to sew?
I actually did right before the pandemic. I had a quilting club at my high school, but I was mainly working with middle school students. My school is a 6 to 12,
Okay.
and it was so much fun. But then the pandemic hit, we went remote, and um, that went down the sideways for
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how do you like this is something that I feel like I've been struggling with a little bit. Like how do you get over making mistakes and like getting in a rut and feel like how do you stay like optimistic and not get discouraged when you run into like a road bump?
Yeah, so I feel part of learning is making mistakes. You're not going to learn unless you make a mistake. And so I like when I make mistakes because it makes me go back and see where did I mess up, reflect on that and do better next time.
Hmm.
So that's what I do. I just go back, think about what I did and just move on, keep going. Don't let the mistakes hold you down. Don't let the mistakes prevent you from learning and keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I feel like I've been quilting for 25 years and like if I would have talked to myself 10 years ago, I would have thought, "Oh, I'm the most perfect quilter. I got it together." But recently I started working on a quilt that I'm remaking that's 10 years old. It's a pattern like I made it 10 years ago and then now I'm making it again and I'm like, "Oh, my piecing has really improved." And so it made me feel like really good, like, "Oh, actually like I am getting better." So,
Yeah. The more you do it, the better you get at something. The more practice you put in,
mhm.
the better it is. Mhm.
What's your like most favorite thing about quilting and your least favorite thing?
My most favorite thing about quilting is picking out fabrics and colors to put together to
Mhm.
design a quilt or plan the quilt that I'm trying to make. And my least favorite right now is basting.
Oh,
Because
okay.
if I'm doing the quilting myself, I live in a New York City apartment, so I don't have a big table where I can do my basting. So it has to be on the floor. I have to move furniture out of the way, and it's just a very long process.
Hmm.
So I'm not enjoying that at the moment at all.
Do you spray baste or do you just pin or how do you baste your quilts?
I spray baste and then I do a set it with an iron, a warm iron to
Okay.
make sure that it stays. And if it's something that has bulky seams, then I will add a pin or two here and there just to make sure that everything stays and
Hmm.
doesn't move.
And what thread do you use? Speaking of like piecing.
I love Aurifil thread
Okay.
50 weight.
Do you have a favorite color?
For general piecing, I like a light gray or a cream color that blends in with most of the colors that I use.
Hmm.
But if I'm doing something with a really dark hue, I would use a darker color.
Do you have any like what are your goals for 2025?
For 2025, I haven't thought that far away yet, but I think in 2025, I would like to have more knowledge of pattern fabric designing. Maybe familiar with Illustrator. It's not a software that I use at the moment,
Hmm.
so that's my goal. Find out the basics that I need to be able to get into fabric designing.
What is there anything that you haven't done in quilting that you're like afraid to try or you haven't tried yet that you want to try?
Free motion quilting.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried it before. I did a whole quilt with it, and I just did not love it.
Yeah.
But I would like to try it out and get better at it. I'm just too scared to do it.
Oh, I'm totally scared. Like I feel like as soon as you like do this, it's just like you just tense up like automatically. Like I can't get my head around that creativity and like the movement and there's like no chance. I think mine would just look like a
Right.
big old thunderstorm. It would just look crazy. So I totally
Yeah,
get it.
I'm amazed by the people that can do design, so they can do shapes and they can repeat it and be very consistent with it.
Mhm.
I just do what do they call it, meandering
Mhm.
stitch. That's the one I've tried before, and it just did not look very meanderish.
Yeah.
It was a mess.
Yeah, that's how I feel like. I don't think that I would. I mean, years ago, I never thought I would do videos though. But I mean, I just don't think I'm that creative to get that down. Do you like binding? Is that something you like to do?
I do. I love
Me too.
binding. I have a little, I did a reel with a little trick on how to make your binding not be on the way,
Okay.
which is I usually use a chopstick and I put it in my hair, put my hair up in a bun,
Okay.
and then I roll up my binding and I stick it in there. And so it's out of the way, it's not on the floor, and you're sewing and you're pulling as much as you need for the little bit and just keep going, and everything is a nice and organized place.
That's hilarious. Do you have a quilt that's on your bucket list that you're looking forward to doing, like something really hard?
I would like to try, what do they call it? The farmer's wife
Oh
quilt?
yeah, I started that and gave
Yeah,
up.
that's the, oh. Why did you give up?
It was a long time ago, and I just was like not feeling it, and so I auction. I think I sold it on eBay or something, like what I had done. I don't
Oh,
even know. It
wow.
was a long time ago.
Yeah, there's someone on my quilt guild has made it twice, and she's all about it. And so every time she speaks about it, it shows us her quilt at the show and tell. I'm inspired by it. I
Hmm.
would really like to try it, but that's going to be years down the line.
Yeah. And how do you decide what your next quilt is going to be that you're working on?
As in designing or which quilt I want to work on.
Like how do you
Like,
decide, when you're going to design your next quilt, and then just talk a little bit about your personal quilting and like how do you decide what you're just going to sew for fun?
yeah, so for designing, I just, whenever the inspiration hits me, I just go on my computer and mock it up and make sure that I save it.
Hmm.
So that when I have more time, I can go back to it and see if it's a pattern that I want to dedicate time to.
Hmm.
And then usually I found it that I look to see there are no designs that look like that or too similar to another
Hmm.
design that's already out. That's the first thing I do. And then I dedicated time to writing it and putting it together. But if it's a personal quilt or something that I'm giving away to a friend or a friend's baby, I like to try a pattern that I've never done before so that I'm learning and improving my skills as I'm doing something for somebody else.
Do you have a big stash of fabrics?
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
It's huge. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
And so I'm assuming you sew your own quilt samples for your pattern covers. Is that right?
that is correct.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Do
Mhm.
you have an upcoming art gallery fabric that you're looking forward to them coming out with that you're looking forward to sewing with?
Yes, the sparkle element.
Okay.
Have you have you seen that one yet?
Yeah, and it would be great if you could talk about the elements and how our gallery names their basics to elements because I bet you know more about it than I do.
I don't know that much. But I do like the sparkle elements because it is a low volume fabric,
Okay.
and I usually don't gravitate towards those, but I would like to use it as my background fabric on another quilt that I'm already thinking about. But I'm not exactly sure how they name their elements
So
fabrics.
the elements, like they came out with, they used to call it pure solids. and then they changed it to pure elements, and then they added all their anything that they keep in stock always. So like pure elements is their solids, and then they have like nature elements, which had like leaves, and then they have square elements, which are little squares, and they have prisma elements, which are triangles. And so they have all these
And the
collections.
oval.
Yeah. No, they're like little it's just a basic, and they just have like 10 or 12 SKUs, but it has one little tiny design, and it's like a basic, and then they come out with one or two a year.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank you
like
for explaining that to me.
yeah, so like oval elements, prisma element, nature elements. I can't think of any others, but there's a lot of them. So, and I think
Yes.
some of them, let me see. Like this one right here is an element. It's a nature element, I think. I think this one's a nature element, which is like a flower.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, this is a floral
Mm-hmm.
element. Yeah. So yeah, we have a bunch of them, but yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Do you have any tips you could share with somebody who's just starting out quilting, like a tip about a sewing machine or a notion or anything like that?
A tip about a sewing machine is check your manual and see how often you need to oil your machine. That's the first thing you need to do, and where to oil it.
Hmm.
Because a clunky machine or a machine that's not clean, it's not going to give you the best stitches ever. So that's my first tip. Yeah.
And what
And
sewing machine are you
then
sewing on right now?
I'm sewing on a Juki TL18.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It's so smooth. It's no bells or whistles. It's just straight stitch. It's just the best.
Isn't that like a semi-industrial?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, that one's really cool. And I think they discontinued it.
Did they?
I don't know. I think it, do you think that's the one they discontinued? I think it might be, but because I was kind of looking at that.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I
I just
interrupted
bought
you.
mine. No, that's okay. I just bought mine in 2021, I
Okay.
want to say. I had a different one, and it spent much more time in the shop than it did at my house.
Oh,
So I was like, I don't, what's the point?
yeah.
So I returned that one because it had been under a year from when I bought it from a dealer. And then I asked, what was the next best machine to get, and he recommended getting the Juki straight stitch.
Hmm.
And I'm in love with that one. It's a reliable machine. It's consistent. Since there are not that many bells and whistles, whenever my daughter comes and tries to play around with it, I'm able to get the settings back to
Hmm.
how I like it, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a favorite notion is a sim ripper.
Okay.
You're gonna spend a lot of time if you're a beginner with a sim ripper, and so get one that is comfortable in your hands. I like one that has a thick handle, an ergonomic handle, um, because if I'm gonna be reaching,
Yeah.
stripping stitches, I want to make sure that I have a good handle on it. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about the family members in your family that sew. You talked a little bit about your mom. Are there any aunts or grandparents or anything like that that also sew?
Yeah, so as far as I know, my great grandmother used to sew. She recently passed at 99 years old, and she was hand sewing until her last day.
Oh, so
Excuse
sorry.
me. My grandmother learned from her, my mother learned from my grandmother. And then I grew up in that environment with my mom having sewing machines and customers and making clothing for people. But it was not something that I was really into.
Hmm.
I would help out. I would, sew a button or do a hem or iron on um, anything that she needed help with. But it was not something that I really wanted to do. It was more like a job. So
Hmm.
I was like, I want to do this. So it wasn't until my late 20s that I picked it up. And as none of my aunts actually sew either, it's been coming from my mom all the way down to me.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I've been watching some shows about like genetics and like heritage and like how people go back and like it's I don't even know what show it is, but it's like a show where they take people who are in the media, like a famous person, and then they go back and trace their lineage like 200 years back, and it's so interesting how they'll be something similar to what they are now like 200 years later. So I always think
Yeah.
there must have been a lot of people sewing in my background.
Yeah. And then for me and my family, my dad was a teacher, or well, he's retired now, but he was a teacher. And I'm the middle child in my household. So I have a little bit of both of my parents. So like half of me, it's both of my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because I sew because my mom used to sew, and then I teach because my dad used to be a teacher. So I feel like I'm the perfect combination of the two.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us. I wanted to kind of go over all the Stronger Together details for all of our customers who are not familiar. So this quilt right here finishes at 48 inches square, and we have raised almost $5,000. So we are 90, almost to our goal. And so if you want to donate, please donate to our campaign for UNCF. And that we're going to go all the way until now. It's basically, we're wrapping up now, but 100% of your donations help underrepresented students earn a college education. Kevin and I will be donating 5,000. If we could get to 6,000, that would be totally amazing. Our designers for this have been Jerester Page, Mary Davis, Sharice Nicole, and Vickeidy Plybon, and the patterns are completely free on Fat Quarter Shop site. And we would love for you to participate. And of course, we'll do this every year. And hopefully we can have you back next year as a designer. That would be so awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time with you today.
Thank you. So now we're going to start part 2 of our live stream. And what's great is it's our second charity event. So this is our second charity event of the year. It's called Moonbeams. We have quilt kits. Now, just so you know, if you pre-ordered your kit, you should have received your kit, or it should have already shipped to you and be on the way to you. Like if you're international, it'll probably take a little bit longer for you to get. But there is a quilt kit and a backing set. And if you buy the kit or the backing, you get the full pattern up front. It is completely free to everyone, though. We do ask for a donation to Make-A-Wish. And this is our 11th charity quilt. And this is, our 11th year. So this is a piece backing. So you can see it's got a lot of different fabrics in it. And then we did put together a foundation paper notion set. And that includes 6 different things, and these are just different papers you can use to make the quilt, and it's up to you if you want to do that. I'm going to be showing mine using this just because I always use paper for everything. And the collection that this quilt is in is called Strawberry Lemonade. This is an exclusive fabric made just for us, and I'm going to show you the block we're going to be working on today. And on the first Friday of each month, from March 2024 to September 2024, we post the free pattern for this quilt long, and it's on our blog and our website. We do ask for a donation to Make-A-Wish, and that money, if you click our link, goes directly to Make-A-Wish. It never comes to Fat Quarter Shop. So that's what's great about it, is because those wishes, that money goes immediately to Make-A-Wish, so they can immediately start offering donations and grant wishes to children immediately. So we're going to work on this block today, and at the end we will be raffling off 5 quilts. Pat Sloan, Lisa Bonjean, Robin Pickens, Lisa Alexander, and then the quilt I'm making on set will be raffled. That will be in October. That will be additional money that will go directly to Make-A-Wish, and we will be giving away free patterns when we get to fundraising milestones 40,000, 60,000, 80,000, and 100,000, which are really cute this year. And every Friday on the first of each month, I'll have a live stream. So the patterns release the first Friday of each month. I will have a live stream that same Friday for a block demo. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the quilt. So I'm going to show you, this is your fabric requirement sheet. This is exactly how the pattern comes in your kit. So the Dove block will be March. The Ohio Star block will be April. Peace and Plenty will be May. Wishing Stars and Friendship Stars will be June. Tree of Life will be July. The finishing will be August, and our backing set will be September. Now, of course, if you get the kit up front, you could just make the whole thing and be done. You don't have to wait for me. It's totally up to you and kind of what your, like how you like to make things. You know, some people will just make this whole thing in a week. Some people will just sew along with me. You can do whatever you think is best for you. And then we did add a coloring sheet here in case you wanted to do that. But one thing I wanted to talk about is the first thing I do before I make any quilt, no matter who the pattern is, I'm going to look through and see if there's any big pieces that need to be cut length of fabric instead of width of fabric. So I'm just going to kind of browse through and see, you know, I'm just looking. I don't like to cut width of fabric borders or sashings and piece them together because to me, that's an extra step I don't need. Now we write our pattern that way because most of you guys like it with the fabric, but I just don't piece that way. I think that it gives me a better looking quilt without that seam in it. And so it's looking like all the blocks don't have anything length of fabric until we get to the finishing. And I will tell you that this is almost impossible to do without square and square paper. And I can show you a trick on how to get all of this to press open. And we can talk about that when we get to release 6. But I would never have let this pattern be published without paper because I would have never been able to do it. So here I'm going to kind of write out what I need. And I'm going to need 2.5 by 60.5 inch strips, and those are going to go here. So you can see we wrote it where you do width of fabric and piece it together, but for me, I'm just going to cut it length of fabric. And then here for the borders, I need 2 4.5 by, and it's always just easier for me to write it out so that I don't have to just flip a million times. 72.5 and 68.5. So I need 2 2.5 by 60.5, 2 4.5 by 72.5, and 2 4.5 by 68.5. And what I'm going to do is this background, I'm going to take that out. I'm going to cut that first before I do anything on the blocks. That way, when I get to the finishing, I have a piece that's big enough. So the first thing to talk about is I am using Aurifil Color 2600. I usually use Color 2000, so I would just suggest use a light gray. Don't use something too dark. If you use something too dark, for example, if you used navy thread, that navy thread would start popping through. So this gray is a good mix between the white and the navy. Another thing that I'm going to be doing differently than the pattern is I'm pressing all my seams open. I decided to do that because that is how I've just been piecing lately. And so I'm just going to make my quilt exactly the way I would at home. The pattern is written so that you can press according to the pattern. So you could press according to the arrows, so you can also do that. I'm just going to be pressing open. So let's start with that. Oh, and then another thing is that I forgot to say is today we're going to be making 2 dove blocks. Now obviously I've already made 1. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you how many total to make and how many per block to make. So I'm going to take my background fabric, and basically I have taken all of this and starched all of it. So it's all starched and ready to go, and I keep the box. I keep all of my fabrics in my box so that as I'm going, I know exactly where my fabrics are. Now I did starch all of this in one big huge piece, which is like 6 1/8 yards. I just kind of have a system to do it, but if you don't want to do that, what you could do is you could cut off 80 inches, an 80-inch piece, use that for your length of fabric, and then cut the rest into segments, whatever size you want. So what I'm going to do is it's 72 is my widest cut. I'm going to and I don't trim these down. I just keep them long and trim them out later. So I'm going to go with 80 inches. So I'm going to do 30 inches, 60 inches, 80 inches, which would be right here. So I'm just going to cut across. Now I'm going to take this and put this back in my bucket, and I can just cut off as I go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to work with it on the iron and kind of give you some tips on cutting length of fabric. So what you want to do is you want to get this piece as straight as possible, flat as possible. So all your creases out, top, bottom, everywhere. But what I want to do is before I start sewing, I want to get these lined up, my fold lined up. You want to get it nice and flat. So it's nice and flat, and then your fold right here, because you've lined up the fold here, this should be perpendicular. I think that's the right word. But basically, do not iron this because you don't want that to get a crease. So then I'm going to take this and fold it up one more time. And you can see it's nice and flat. This is 100% lined up. And then what I'm going to do is I always use the 8.5 by 24.5 inch ruler when I'm doing borders, even if they're not 8.5, because this is a bigger ruler and it will keep the weight on it and it'll be less likely to shift. So what you need to do is line up this right here, that fold. Come back down and look at this fold. And they need to be lined up exact. If it's not, then you have to refold. So that's lined up and that's lined up. So it's gonna, if this is lined up straight and this is lined up straight, you should not have a wavy border when you cut. So then I'm not gonna cut right on the edge. I'm gonna give it at least 3/4 of an inch, because if you get too close, it's gonna be not as even. When you're cutting borders, press as hard as you can on your ruler so it doesn't shift. And that's a nice cut. Now I'm going to rotate this. And I need 4, 4.5. So the first thing I'm going to do is line this up. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is, you see there's a big gap right there. So my ruler is not flat. So what I'm going to do is take some of my scrap fabric and I'm going to make a pile here to make it even. So what I'm going to do is just put some fabrics here that are about the same height. And then when I put this here, my ruler doesn't just go all the way down. I'm trying to get it the same width. Okay, so I'm going to cut 4.5. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Right here at the end, if you have fabric over here, it's not going to just drop off. Okay, I'm going to line this up again. Sorry, ignore my gray hair. Okay, I'm going to cut the 4.5. I'm going to do the same thing here. 4.5. And this is 2 layers at a time. So that's going to give me 2 cuts is going to give me 4 of my length of fabrics. And then I need 2.5. So I'm going to cut a 2.5. And then this you will use for cutting your blocks. Now, one thing I want you to notice is when I started cutting, I started from the fold, not the salvage. I feel like I get a lot better results starting from the fold end because it's flatter. You can see the salvage is not as nice and flat. So you will get a better result starting that way. So I'll put this in my box, and I'm going to show you how I put my borders and everything in my box. The first thing is I want to show you on the mat, when you open this, it should be 100% straight, and it luckily is. So these are my B's. They're going to be my sashing in my last step. So I'm going to put my B's here. And like I said, I'm not going to trim them down. I'll do that later. And these are going to be my C's. And this will probably, if I just put it all the way through, it's going to break. So I'm going to put just C's here. And it ends up being C1 and C2, but I'll figure that out later. I used to clip all the layers together, and then my Wonder Clip started breaking. So this goes away to the side, and then I can start my quilt. We're going to zoom in. Okay, so then I'll go to release 1, the dove blocks. Like I said, you'll be making 2 blocks. And I've already cut everything. This block, you can use H300 and H600. Now, just so you know, we did not put H600 in that foundation kit because you only use it once, and I think that was kind of a waste of money. So I'm going to show you how to do a traditional half square triangle for that piece and triangle paper for the next. And these blocks finish at 15 inches and have unfinished at 15.5. So we're just going to go in order of the pattern. So I'm going to take a fabric A and a fabric G. So we've got A and G. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this together. And since I said we're not using half square triangle paper here, I think it's very important to pin on each end where your line isn't going to be. I'm going to use this Creative Grids seam guide, and basically it's a built-in 1/2 inch seam. Okay, my friction pin's not working, but we'll have to get another one. Yeah, it's definitely out of ink. Okay, so basically you get the gist. You're going to sew this. Now, if you didn't want to have to do it that way, what you could do is draw a line with a regular ruler in the center, and then mark a line 1/4 inch away, and this pin works, or 1/4 inch away. So you don't have to have that seam guide. That's just what I would do. So once you have this sewn, you're going to take your Aurifil 2600 and you're going to stitch directly on the 2 outside lines. That is going to look like this. And it's hard to see the, can you zoom in right there pretty please? You can hardly see that thread. You can see how that thread, even though it's gray, is blending in. So I've used just a regular 1.5 stitch length. Use whatever your normal stitch length is. And then I'm going to cut this apart. Right in the middle. You're going to use one of these for one block. And we're going to use this one for the block we're making. So I'm going to go iron this real quick. I'm going to set my seam, press to one side, and then I'm going to press open. Now, like I said, I'm going to be pressing open. You can press according to the pattern, whichever way you prefer. Then we're going to trim this down to 6.5 inches. So I'm just going to take a 6.5 inch square. And trim it down. And of course, one thing I would say is, you know, everybody has a different way they like to make half square triangles. You know, Joanna Figueroa makes hers one way. Lori Holt makes hers a different way. I do mine a different way. Lisa Bonjean, everybody does theirs different. Sherry and Chelsea even do theirs different. Figure out whatever method you like, and then you would be able to do this step and the next step according to that. And you would just look at your pattern and figure out what size you need. So you need 2 of these, 1 for each block. So here's this one. Now the next step is to make half square triangles. Make 4 half square triangles that finish 3 inches and unfinish 3.5. So we're going to be using H300, and you can see 3 inches finished and unfinished 3.5. So the unfinished 3.5 matches the pattern right here, unfinished 3.5. You're going to cut 2 squares of this off. Take a fabric B and H rectangle, and that's how we wrote the pattern. Put them right sides together. Oh, we didn't write it that way. We wrote it the traditional way. And basically you'd put your paper here, pin it here, I'd pin it here, here, and here. Lower your stitch length, whatever your normal stitch length is, lower it a little bit and stitch only on the dotted lines, exactly on the dotted lines. That's going to look like this. So you can see the stitches on this are much smaller than the stitches here. Can we zoom in? And the reason why is when you're pulling this paper off, if you have a long stitch length, your paper is going to not pull off nicely. So that's one tip. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the half square triangle paper off, and I'm going to cut right on the line. Now you need to stitch directly on the dotted lines and trim on the solid lines. And the closer you trim and the closer you cut, the better results you will get. Okay, 2 of these are going to be used for the other block. So these 2 we're going to use for this block. So I'm going to show you, you pull the paper off, you crease the paper first, and then pull this off. Now you can use this dog ear clipper to cut these little edges off. And then we won't have to do that after we iron. And this is called the dog ear clipper. Then we're going to take these and press them open. Now, if you just press, you're not going to get as good of a result as if you press down first and then to one side. Now I'm going to press open. And anytime I press open, I always check the front and do a press on the front. So now we have step 1 done and step 2 done. Now we're going to move to step 3. Now here you're going to be making one of these for each block and one of these for each block. So I'm going to show you how to make this one. You're going to take a fabric C square, a fabric E rectangle, and one of your half square triangles, and this is really important for the direction. So you're just looking here and you've got it the right direction. You're going to put this right sides together, and I am going to pin. I am a big pinner. And then I'm going to stitch with a 1/4 inch seam. Set my seam, press to one side, press open. And then I'm just going to make sure I do it this way and not this way. Just keep following your diagram. Now, this is pretty important. You can pin on this side or this side. I always will pin on this side because I feel like I just get a better result. Most people do it the other way so that when it's going through their sewing machine, I will just go straight down this 1/4 inch seam. A lot of people will do this up so that they make sure they hit that little notch. I don't feel like I need to do that, and I just feel like I get worse results when I do that. So I'm gonna just sew this way. And it hit perfectly. Set your seam, press to one side. Oops. Okay, so you see right here how this flipped over? I don't want to have that in my quilt, especially since I'm going to be auctioning it off. So I'm just going to undo this. Press it flat and go back over that seam. So we made one of these for each block, and then you need to make a second one that's opposite two for the next block. So you'll make two of these, one for this block and one for this block. So that is step 3. So now I can set that aside. Now I'm going to take fabric I and fabric F. I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner. And so again, you're going to make one for this block, one for this block, 2 total each. So I'm going to place this one just like this. Now, I'm going to use seam-align glue. It's something that I've been using a lot lately. I usually do 3 dots. And I'm going to sew directly on that line. I'm going to change to an open toe foot. Stitch directly on the line. We're going to trim a 1/4 inch away. And I'm going to press this open. So this one right here is this. And we're just making this left side right now. Then I'm going to take a fabric I, a fabric K, and we're going to sew these 3 together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one right side together and pin 3 times. This one is a really nice white on white. Just make sure you've got the right side where it needs to be. So you've got that. We're going to go to the sewing table and I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So change my foot. Now you can see that gray thread a little bit. And then on top, you're putting this one at the top. So I'm going to pin that again 3 times. Sew across. Now, if you cut accurately, there shouldn't be a wave. If you have to pin and stretch your pieces, you might not have cut accurately. So here's this one right here. And this one right here is right here. So it's the same technique. You're just using the corner square on the other end. Just follow your diagrams. Now we're going to move to page 3. We're going to move this one away. And we're going to take a fabric D square, 2 of them. Draw a line from corner to corner. And I used a friction pen. It can be totally controversial. Use whatever kind of marking pen you want. I use this. It's what I've used for years. And it disappears with heat. So that's why I do that. Okay, now here. This one's going to go here. And you're going to just be paying attention. The big clue is just pay attention to the left only. Don't pay attention to this one. So you're going to do one of those and one of those for each block. Now this one, because when you cut it apart, you wouldn't really have a half square triangle. You would have this funky business. I'm not going to try to save that. So I'm going to use the glue. And I'm going to glue that. And I tend to use a little bit more glue than is needed, just FYI. You don't have to use this much. It's just what I do. And if I was making all of this at one time, basically I would glue all of these at one time, so all of these at one time. Now I'm going to stitch on that line, and I'm going to switch back to the open toe foot, stitch directly on the line. Now some people prefer to stitch a scant bit towards this side or this side to the inside. I don't do that, but some people do. You're going to trim 1/4 inch away. I'm going to throw this away. Do the same thing here. Press here and here. Press to one side. Press open. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I do here. I'm going to take a ruler and line it up. Any kind of square. This is 90-degree, right? 90-degree angle. So anything that's a 90-degree angle. And then I'm just going to cut. And if anything is off, it will just make it perfect. That's totally optional. It's not written in the pattern. But I do this with everything I make. It just helps the next step be accurate. So you're going to make one of these for each block. Then you're going to make one of these for each block. Same technique, opposite corners. So that's kind of the hardest part. Now we're going to do the bird head unit, which is a fabric J square and a fabric L square. You're going to do that same draw line from corner to corner. And what I love about our patterns, I mean, I hate to be bragging, but I love, because I don't ever read any of this. Cue to you guys, I don't read anything. I just look at my pictures. I'm horrible. I don't ever read anything, except when I'm proofing the pattern. Add this to the bottom. And when I'm doing this, I'm not just flopping it on there. I'm really making sure that the edges are perfect. So you shouldn't be able to see the white here, and you shouldn't be able to see the orange there. Stitch on that line. Trim 1/4 inch away. Press. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Ignore my gray hair. So now we're going to move to the last two steps. Here is where I start using my design board. I always use my design boards actually, but when I'm filming, sometimes I don't show as much detail just because it kind of gets in the way. So I'm going to find all my pieces. And then I'm going to triple check to make sure. So I've got half square triangle, body, my whites go this way, and there's this. Now I'm going to show you a trick, how to save time. So we've got that. I'm going to lay out the entire block. And I'm going to make sure it's right first. So I'm going to check every single angle with this diagram. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put these two together and pin. And I'm going to pin before I go to the sewing machine. And you notice when I'm sewing, I sew super fast. That's because I've pinned. If I didn't pin, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm going to pin there. And right here, if you start seeing your seams come apart, that means your stitch length is too small. Mine's not, so that's good. And to save time, I can go ahead and put this here. So I'm going to sew these two, keep them chained together, and sew this one separately, and you'll see what that means in a second. Go back to my 1/4 inch foot. Do a couple stitches in between. Then I keep it on my design board where it goes, and then I can just move it off, press, put it back on the board. So from here, I could go ahead and just sew these two together, and I could pin when I'm at the ironing board. I'm going to cut this apart, put this right side together. I'll pin the left and the right first. Okay, and here I'm going to do poke a pin. This is my little method. And I'm going to poke the pin right through that point on the front. Poke the pin through the point on the bottom. Push it through. Stand your pin straight up. Remove it and then just put your pin back in. Then we'll sew across here 1/4 inch. Hopefully this matches. It does, yay! Usually when I do that method, I usually don't even have to peek because oh my gosh, it always works. Okay, but I gotta fix this. So to fix that, I'm just gonna pull these stitches out, lay it flat, go back over that seam. Press open. Put it back on the board. And you've already sewn this. So we'll put these two right sides together. Pin. And right here, there's not a point to match up or anything. Same thing, set your seam, press to one side. I feel like I say that over and over and over. I feel like a robot. Press your seam, press open, 1/4 inch. No, I messed this up. And like I said, whenever I do that, I always press the front. That way you don't get a duck pleat. Put this back, making sure you've got it in the right direction. Put this one right sides together. And it's easier for me to sew with this on top rather than this on top. It just is easier. So I'm going to pin this. And this will be 15.5 inches unfinished. And for the block, you're gonna make 2. And you'll wanna stay tuned because I have sample maker blocks showing different fabrics so that if you don't want to use the quilt kit, you can see 4 different designers in addition to Sherry and Chelsea. And here I'm gonna line this up and pin. Set your seam, press to one side, making sure that point matches. Press this open. So your block is done. You know, just make sure it looks like a dove, it's flying. I am gonna trim the outside edges. That's something I always do. It's totally optional. Just take a ruler and trim. That will get any loose threads off the edge and make it perfectly square, which to me does help when you get your final quilt together. It's just an added thing. A lot of people don't do this. Teresa, who does a lot of sewing for Fat Quarter Shop, she doesn't do this at all. I think she thinks I'm crazy that I do this. So, like I say, do whatever makes you feel good, whatever, you know, this is kind of, and you can see right there, this kind of puckered out. There you go. So you're going to make 2 of these blocks, and I'm going to show you sample maker blocks. So this one obviously is Strawberry Lemonade by Sherry and Chelsea. This is what comes in the quilt kit. There are fabric requirements listed if you want to purchase things separately, and I'm going to show you different collections. So these, all the blocks are exactly the same. So I'm just going to show you one of the blocks. This fabric collection is Antoinette by French General. This background is a French General favorite. This collection is Flower Girl by My So Quilty Life. Nova pieced this, and she used Bella Color 182 as her background. Now, one thing to also think about is, you know, these fabrics are used 4 times. You could always change it to where you use 4 different ones, or you could use the same here and then the same here. You don't have to keep the fabric placement the same if you don't want to. This next one is Honey Bloom by Moda Fabrics. The designer is 3 sisters. Angel made this one, and as her background, she used color 200 for right here. And then this fabric collection by Moda is called Ridgewood. It's a Minnick and Simpson collection made by Shelley, and this background is from her collection. It's from the Ridgewood collection. So let's see. So these 2 used a Bella Solid. This one used French General Favorites. This used a background from the collection. And this used a background for the collection. So you can use these blocks just as inspiration, and you can see this quilt kit has a dark background. All of these designers chose to use a light background. You can do scrappy, you can do whatever. And one thing I did want to mention is if you make these quilts, you could always auction it off for a charity. And so those are our blocks, and you'll want to join me in April 5th for our second pattern release. And that second pattern release will be Emma's 17th birthday, which will be super exciting. I did want to let you know that Monday, March 4th is the 6-year anniversary of Kimberly Stitch Squad. And that is a Facebook group that we started, and it's just a fun way to share any project you're working on. And it could be cross stitch, it could be quilting, it could be a jacket. It has 27,000 members, and Kate is having a fun giveaway over there sharing for 6 days. So 6 days of giveaways starting March 4th. And you're going to use the link that Ashley provides below to join, or just go to Facebook and search groups Kimberly Stitch Squad. And thank you so much for watching. I did want to let you know today I'm giving away 3 Moonbeams kits to 3 winners. You have until March 7th, which is my birthday, to enter, and then Ashley's going to pick winners on March 8th. But what I want you to do is I want you to comment on this video, and I feel like I do the same thing over and over. So when I do these charity quilt-alongs, these sew with me's, I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over and over. Do you guys like that? if you don't, what do you want me to change? Like, give me some tips on things you want to see that are different in these actual sewing tutorials so that I can keep that in mind to keep things fresh and exciting. I hope all of you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.